One of the greatest foods of all time. Find it worldwide. Everyone loves it. Vegans love it. Vegetarians love it. Are those the same thing? I don't know. I love it. My family loves it. It's one of the greatest things ever. We're talking about pizza. This is a recipe that I make for my family all the time. They love it. They can't get enough of it. It's delicious, and I'm excited to share it with you. Come on this journey with me, your friend, HealiumCrackle. Welcome to Crackle's Cooking. Okay. So you have three main parts to any pizza. You have the crust, the sauce, and the toppings, almost always including cheese. So we're gonna start off with the base of any good pizza, the crust. There's a few things that you need, especially for a good crust. Bread flour is always number one. You can use all-purpose flour, there's no harm in that, but the bread flour has a lot of gluten in it, a lot of protein, and what that's gonna do is it's gonna allow the dough to stretch a lot when we stretch it nice and thin before we put it in the oven. You want something that has a lot of stretch in it. Bread flour is gonna get you there. Olive oil, salt, yeast, water. It's a very basic dough recipe. Let's get right into it. You want to start off with 500 grams of bread flour. You want to use a scale for this to maintain consistency and accuracy, because if you add too much water or too much flour, you can really screw up the texture and the workability, and most importantly, the flavor of the dough. To your bread flour, add your tablespoon of salt. This is going to act as a flavor enhancer and give your dough a little bit more flavor after it's baked. You're also going to measure out 350 grams of warm water. How warm are we talking? We're talking about 90 to 105 degrees. It's about lukewarm. You should be able to stick your finger in it and not really feel a difference. It should feel no different than your body temperature. To that water, you're gonna add your tablespoon of salt and your teaspoon and a half of yeast. What this is gonna do is it's gonna bloom the yeast. What that means is that you're activating it, you're getting the yeast alive again, because it's in a dormant state when it's in these packages that we have. It's dormant, it's not alive. It's like hibernating. When you pick a yeast, you want to make sure that it's active dry, not rapid rise yeast. We want to give the dough time to develop flavor, and if you use something that's rapid rise, the dough is going to rise and puff up way too quickly before you're ever even, the more time you allow the dough to ferment, the more flavor you're going to develop. The sugar is mostly there to activate the yeast, like we discussed earlier, as well as provide a colorant to the dough. It's going to brown the crust a lot sooner and at a much lower temperature than if we didn't add the sugar. It suits low temp domestic ovens like the one we have here really well. To that water, you're also going to add your tablespoon of olive oil. This is going to add a little bit of flavor, but also again act as a colorant, because we're working with such a low temp oven here. We need as much color as we can get to develop flavor, and so it looks pretty good. Once you've got your dry ingredients and your wet ingredients, you're going to add one to the other slowly, bit by bit. You're going to make a shaggy dough. Once a shaggy dough forms, you're going to put it out onto your work surface and start to knead. You'll notice that it's probably going to be very sticky. That's okay. If it's too sticky and it's sticking to your hands, it's sticking to your table, add a little bit of flour, throw it onto the workbench, knead that flour into it. When you're kneading, you're going to take the dough, fold it over itself, and rotate 90 degrees as you do so. Fold, rotate, fold, rotate. This is going to develop a lot of gluten structure in the dough. You need that gluten for those bubbles to form so that you have a nice, fluffy, crispy pizza crust. Continue to knead and add flour to your workbench until it's only slightly sticky. It might still stick to the table a little bit. That's okay. If there's a little bit too much water in it, that's better than if it's too dry. The more water that is in the dough, the longer you're going to be able to keep it in the oven so that it can cook farther, so it can crisp up, so it can brown up. That's okay. Once your dough is at the proper hydration and only slightly sticky, continue kneading it for about 10 minutes. This will ensure that all those gluten structures that we talked about earlier are going to be there and give you nice bubbles. A good way to test if you have enough gluten development is to take a little piece of your dough and try to stretch it out as thin as you can. If you can stretch it out nice and thin and see light through it without it tearing, you've got enough gluten. You can move on to shaping. To pre-shape your dough, you're going to take your nice ball of dough that you've kneaded for 10 minutes and your arms are nice and strong and swole, and you're going to do the scoot and pinch method. You're going to cup your hands underneath the dough and pinch it. Pinch your palms together to make a nice round, supple lump of dough. To shape the dough into the final balls that are actually going to turn into the pizzas, we're going to divide our dough into 4 equal parts, about 213 grams a piece. A little more, a little less, not a big deal, just around 213 grams. Next, you're going to shape the pizza dough balls that are going to turn into the actual crust. Roll the dough by stretching and pinching with the palms of your hand. Rotate the dough as you do this for nice, perfect rotational symmetry so you end up with a nice round ball. Finish the dough by pinching a nice little tip so that it looks like a little onion on what will now be the bottom of the roll. Pinching this off well and properly is going to ensure that you have minimal thin spots once you stretch out the dough for your final pizza. Place your dough balls about 4 to 5 inches apart in a nice flat tray, something that will give them room to spread out as well as rise. Place the dough balls in the tray and press down slightly and gently to flatten them a little bit. Next, put a nice thin layer of neutral flavored oil on the tops of the dough balls. This will ensure no drying out and will also keep the dough balls nice and fresh. Cover your trays, place them in the fridge, and let them ferment for no less than 24 hours. Sauce. Just as important as the dough, it's going to be a foundation for your toppings as well as many flavors that you put into your pizza. Get yourself a nice tall pot, one that you can put a lot of ingredients in as well as prevent some splattering through the cooking process. Set that pot on a medium-high heat, around a 6 out of 10 for us. To that pot, add about 3 to 4 tablespoons of olive oil, enough to cover the bottom of the pot. Dice up about 1/4 of an onion and mince 4 cloves of garlic, thereabouts. If you want to add more, add more. If you want less, add less. Totally up to you. Once the oil in that pot is up to temperature, throw those onions and that garlic into the pot and let it saute for no more than 5 minutes. You don't want to burn or get color on anything if you can help it. Next, add your can of tomatoes. The best canned tomatoes you can get. I get these Cento San Marzano whole peeled tomatoes. I feel like they have a really good flavor and they blend up and cook really nicely. After you add the tomatoes, go ahead and get yourself 1 can's worth of water. Also add that to the pot. This is going to allow the sauce to cook for a very long time and not reduce too much to where it turns more into tomato paste rather than tomato sauce. Bring everything in that pot up to a nice low bare simmer and add 1 lovely sprig of basil in. You're gonna let that simmer for at minimum 45 minutes up to 2 hours. You really need to keep an eye on it and make sure it doesn't reduce too much. You're looking for maybe 30% reduction, not down to 30%, but about 30% less liquid. You know how it goes. Once your sauce is done simmering, take it off the heat and go over to your immersion blender. Take that blender and blitz the hell out of that sauce. You want it as smooth as possible. If you have some small chunks here and there, it's not a big deal, but you don't want anything so big that it's gonna pose an issue while eating the pizza. Once your sauce is nice and blended, go ahead and pour it into a nice airtight container and let that sit overnight in the fridge to develop flavor even more. We good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Toppings, important to any pizza. It's like the best part besides, you know, everything else. You can pretty much do whatever you want here. It's your pizza, but what I've found works best for me are what I have laid out right here in front of me. Most importantly, low moisture, whole milk mozzarella. This stuff is ideal for pizza, especially when you're using a low temp oven. We can only get up to 500 degrees, whereas most conventional pizza ovens can get up towards to 1100 degrees. We don't have that here. So low moisture mozzarella is gonna be your friend. Low moisture mozzarella, it's good, it's delicious, use it. Pepperonis, again, you can use whatever you want. You want some artisanal pepperonis, you want some regular cheap ass pepperonis, whatever you want, go for it. What I have are my favorite and the pepperonis I see every like top tier pizza restaurant using are these cup and char pepperonis. These say cup and crisp, same thing. As they cook, they cup up, the edge of that pepperoni is gonna crisp up or even char, hence the name. And you're gonna get these delicious little pockets of oil in the little cup of pepperoni here. Delicious little flavor bombs. It's gonna add a little bit of zhuzh to your pizza. Now this last one, I might lose some of you here, all right? I love pineapple on pizza. I think it goes great. I think the sweetness and the acidity of the pineapple goes perfect with the sauce, and the saltiness of the cheese and the pepperoni. I think it's delicious. And when I worked at a pizza restaurant, they said pineapple on pizza is the best thing ever. So straight from the pros, pineapple's the best. Use it or not, do whatever you want. We're gonna talk about the wet towel method. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So I know everybody wants to learn how to throw dough like a professional. Throw dough like a pro, as the kids used to say. So before we get started making real dough, this is how you practice. So you're gonna start with your dough in your dominant hand. Now, the motion is going from here, with both hands outstretched, from here to here, going like this. And as you do this, you're gonna use your other hand, your non-dominant hand, to catch the dough, just like that. And you're gonna repeat the other side, boom, just like that. It's a very symmetrical motion. You're going back and forth. As I've heard it described, you're basically high-fiving yourself and finishing on the elbow. You're going like that. Don't actually make contact with your hand. That's gonna ruin the dough. So you're going whoop, 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 whoop. And you're gonna do this with our pizza. It's gonna be about maybe up to 6 times, and it'll be stretched already. You'll see the guys at pizza restaurants, and they'll do this like maybe 8 or 10 times, but that's because they're trying to start with a dough that's this big and getting it to like 22 inches. So you're not doing that here. You're only making maybe a 12-inch pizza. You're going back and forth, back and forth. Now this is the harder part. I've heard the toss described as starting with throwing a frisbee and ending shooting a basketball. Starting with throwing a frisbee and ending with shooting a basketball. So we'll do this real quick. 5 or 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And on the 6th toss, you want to land on your dominant hand. No matter how many times you're tossing, you want to land on your dominant hand. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Land, frisbee, basketball. All right. So we're gonna toss, 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 toss. Just like that. Catching it is also another sort of difficult thing. The best way is on the back of your hand, like that. That's the best way. So you're catching it, back of your hand. Not a big deal. So now that you've been able to practice with your nice wet square towel, I think it's time to move on to some real dough. I don't know if I'm actually going to use that. Before we get into any making or baking of pizzas, I want to briefly talk about tools. I don't feel like this is something that is really discussed well in a lot of videos, so I want to touch on it briefly so you get a general rundown of why I'm using the things I'm using to make the pizza I make. For starters, you want to get yourself one of these. This is a pizza stone or baking stone. It goes by many different names. These are ideal for making pizzas. The reason for that is that they hold a lot of heat, and they can hold that heat for a very long time. These are great for pizza because they allow a lot of heat transfer between the baking surface and the dough. This one in particular is made of ceramic, but they come in many different forms, namely steel and another mineral called cordiorite. Cordiorite, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Cordiorite.
The only real difference between all three of these different types of pizza stones or pizza steels is just price, mainly. You're looking to spend $30 to $40 for something like this, or like $150 for a baking steel, which you don't really get a whole lot more extra performance out of a baking steel. You get a marginally better transfer of heat from the steel to the crust, so you get a marginally more crispy crust. But if you're just starting out, just go with one of these. I have used this bad boy since I was a child. This is my mother's stone. She never made pizza with it, but I do now, and it's lasted forever. It's a great piece of work, piece of pottery. What would you call it? Ceramic. It's a ceramic. If you're in a pinch, you can use an inverted baking sheet. That works okay. You're not gonna get quite as crispy of a crust because the thermal mass is a lot lower and you're not gonna be able to hold that much heat. But pizza stone, second most important tool in your arsenal. The first most important tool you need to make good pizza are these bad boys right here. These are pizza peels. I have a wooden one here and a stainless steel one here. The reason I have two is very simple. The wooden one gets the pizza off of the peel into the oven, whereas the stainless steel one gets the pizza onto the peel and out of the oven. You can get away with just using a steel one. I don't think you can get away with just using a wooden one. The only difference is that if you use a wooden one to get the pizza into the oven, you have to use a lot less flour on the peel than if you were to use a steel one to get it out of the peel, off of the peel into the oven. And I don't really like how much flour I have to put on a steel one for that. I find it sort of screws up the texture of the crust. So using a wooden one uses a lot less flour, and therefore I feel it tastes a whole lot better. This one I believe is about 14 inches. That's the size I would recommend. It gives you plenty of room to place your pizza wherever you need to, and it gives you a lot of workability. This is a 12-inch stainless steel pizza peel. Try saying that 5 times fast. And it's ideal for getting it out of the oven because this is very thin here. You can really get up under that crust very easily. Can't do that as easily with the pizza peel. I don't even know if you can. I've never tried to use this wooden pizza peel to get a pizza out of the oven. I just said pizza like 25 times in the same sentence, and now I'm a little disoriented. Now, I get it. You don't want to buy 2 whole different pieces of equipment for your kitchen just to make pizza. I understand that. If you're really trying to be frugal about this and you don't want to spend any money and you just want to make a good pizza, you can use, again, an inverted baking tray as the top of your peel, and you can use that to sort of shimmy the pizza off of it. Hell, I've seen people use a sheet of cardboard as a pizza peel, and that works just fine. Cutting board, an old pizza box, anything that's wide and broad like the pizza peel that you can get a good grip on is going to work just fine as a pizza peel. The last sort of kind of important, no, it's really important. You really need this to really make your life a lot easier when it comes to making pizza, is one of these things. This is a bench scraper. It's basically just a small rectangle of stainless steel that you can use to cut dough, as you've seen in the dough part of this video, and you can also use it to scrape the dough out of your dough tray when you're ready to actually finally make the pizza. So, in my opinion, very indispensable tool. This will make your life a whole lot easier. It also comes in handy when you're making dough. You can scrape dough off of your bench, hence a bench scraper. Imagine that. What'll it come up with next? And it's just an overall great tool to have in your kitchen. You can use this for all sorts of things. This might come in handy with the Spätzle video. We're gonna find out more about that maybe in the future, but for now, get one of these bad boys for your pizza. It's great. Moving on. Oh, and before I forget, make sure to preheat your oven to the highest possible temperature it can go. At least 500 degrees, nothing colder than that. Put your pizza stone in the oven on the highest rack and preheat for no less than 1 hour. The hotter you get that stone, the better. Now, let's make some pizza. All right, take 2. All right, so you've got everything set up for your pizza. You got your flour, sauce, cheese, pepperoni, whatever other toppings you want. It's time to put this bad boy together. So here we go. So before you start anything, take some of your flour. This can be all-purpose bread flour, doesn't matter. Take some of your flour, put it on that peel, all right? Not a big deal on the peel. I'm gonna set this aside for just a second.
What should the dough look like when you take it out?
Good question. So as you can see right here, it's a little wrinkly right here. That's where an air bubble was. But as this dough sort of warmed up, it's sitting out for maybe like 15 minutes. As this dough warms up, the bubble deflated. That's okay. That bubble might even spring back up if we're lucky. You kind of don't want your dough sitting out for too long. The warmer it gets, the harder it's going to be to work with. So you really want this as cold as possible. I'm a boss though, so I can use this slightly warm dough. And this is where your bench scraper comes in. You're going to take your bench scraper. You're going to gently get up under that dough, like so. Get up under that dough. Oh, it's a little sticky. Oh, it's a little sticky, and then plop right into your flour. I do the top side. You can see this is the bottom here. It's a little craggly, little bubbly. Top side or bottom side up, always. So you're gonna take your dough that's in your flour and you're gonna dust it completely. You're gonna want every crevice covered in flour. No wet spots, all right? You don't want any wet spots. That's bad. If you have a wet spot, it's gonna stick to the peel. You're not gonna be able to get it off. Boom. So remember that bottom side was facing up in our bowl? That is now the bottom again. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna use your finger and the side of your hand here to make a ridge. See that? You're gonna go all the way around and you're pushing down towards the table and also against your other hand. What this is doing is this is pre-forming the crust. This is gonna get that nice pillowy edge when it bakes. Next, you're gonna take whichever hand is your dominant hand, place it onto your disc of dough here. You're gonna stretch your fingers out as you rotate, but you're gonna only wanna use the tips or the pads of your fingers here to stretch. You want more dough here in the center than you want on the ends here towards that ridge. This is where that tossing is gonna come into play. Take your non-dominant hand, get up under the crust, plop the top onto your dominant hand, okay? And you're gonna wanna work a little fast here because the dough is going to start drooping and misshaping the longer you don't do anything with it. So you're gonna plop the top onto your right hand and begin to slap and throw. All right. So right there, and when you catch it, that is the top. So put the top face up. And there you go. So the bottom should be smoother than the top here. And that's for multiple reasons, mostly so it can get off of the peel. Now you're gonna wanna work quickly. You're going to want to get your ladle and start saucing up. About 2.5 to 3 ounces. I think this is a 4-ounce ladle. Yeah, this is a 4-ounce ladle. And you're gonna plop that right in the center. Right in the center. Using the bottom of your ladle here, you're going to sort of rock the ladle back and forth as you make circles. Rocking, rocking, rocking. And you're gonna wanna get that sauce all the way to the edge. You can see I kind of screwed up a little bit right here. You're gonna want that all the way up into the edge, just like that. The dough or the sauce went over the crust right here. That's totally okay. Your crust is gonna be A-okay. Next, cheese. I always start from the edge. Always start from the edge, kind of using your fingers as a guide, and then fill up the center. And then if you see any wet spots, you know, you can just, or I guess exposed spots, not wet spots, you can just go right over that. Not a problem. I'm actually gonna do my pineapples first, so those pepperonis can sit on top and cup up and get really nice and delicious. I'm gonna do pepperoni, or pineapple, whatever, and pepperoni on top. All right. You don't have to be meticulous about this. Just follow your heart. Just follow what you feel is best. Boom. Now that, my friends, is one good looking pizza. So this is the second hardest part of making a pizza, actually getting it into the oven. There's a little bit of a trick that I learned to make sure that your pizza gets off the peel. You're gonna want to take a corner, usually the one closest to you when you're holding it, lift it up, get a little bit of air underneath that. See that sliding? See that sliding back and forth? That's good. We're gonna move over to the oven, and we are just gonna, with confidence and as level as possible, just like that. It's just that easy. And now we wait. So when you're baking the pizza, you can move it as much as you want, really, but you don't want to open the oven too much because you're going to lose that critical heat that is there to crisp up and make the pizza delicious. With that pizza stone sitting in there for as long as it has, that bottom is going to get nice and crispy, and you're going to have a nice crispy crackly crust, and you're also going to make sure that the sauce doesn't sog up your bread too much. So we'll check back in about maybe 5 minutes, and we'll see if that pizza needs to be rotated. Yeah, so now we wait. Now we just chill. So our pizza's been in the oven for maybe like 6 minutes now. And we're gonna go ahead and take a look. We're gonna take a peep and see how our pizza's doing. Okay, so you see right there? That's good. That's some good shit right there. That little bit of bubblage and a little bit of crisp. And you can see we're getting a little bit of color here. A little bit of browning. It needs to go a little bit longer. So we're gonna go ahead, pop that back in, and we're done. You can see that I gave it a little bit of a rotation. You definitely want to do that at least once throughout the baking process. It just gives it a little bit more of an even bake. The front door here is going to reflect a lot less heat than the back 3 walls. So that's why you want to rotate it, because all that heat's going to come from the back rather than the front of the oven. Alrighty, folks. Now that is a pizza. You can see we've got lovely color here on the end, on this side of the crust. It's beautiful. That's that side that, as I was making it, that I said was gonna be really puffier than this side over here. So it's delicious. All of our pepperonis cupped up, some of them even charred. See that? Everything cooked beautifully. You have a little bit of oil here from the cheese. It's gonna be delicious. Let's cut this bad boy. This is how you know if you've cooked your pizza right. Listen. Hear that crisp? That little, that is how you know it's a good pizza. That is where it's at, folks. So it might be epic. Ready?
Yep.
That's where it's at, baby. Let's dig into this bad boy. So good. It's so good. That cheese, that sauce that we spent a lot of love making, the crust, it's perfect. I haven't even gotten to the pepperoni yet. Oh yeah. That little bit of crispiness on the edge of the crust, or the pepperoni, phenomenal, phenomenal. You make this pizza and you will have more friends. I promise you. You make this pizza and people will like you. That's just a fact. I make it, people like me. That's it, I'm done. Yo, peace out. Go make some pizza. Straight from the pros, pineapple's the best. Use it or not, do whatever you want. Once you have this down, the throw.
Bubby, what up? Roo!
Okay.
Bubby, Roo!
What are you doing? Watch out. Watch out.
Hey, hey! Hey, hey! Sorry. It's okay.
You okay? All right. See ya.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Hi, bub. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, he heard me.
Yeah, you good boy. Yes.
Little man. I got some grub for you. Right here. Come here. Is it good? I think he likes it.